Welcome to the Book Voices channel. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest book discussions. Now let's dive into today's book.
Welcome to the deep dive. Basically, we cut through the noise, we take sources you're interested in, and pull out the key stuff for you.
Yeah, it's like a shortcut to getting informed on something specific.
Exactly. And this deep dive is specifically for you, our listener. Today, we're getting into Eduardo Clemente's book, Attitude is Your Superpower.
Right. And Clemente's book, it has this really accessible feel, doesn't it? Like you're getting advice from a mentor.
Totally. It's based on his own career, his life lessons, things you probably don't learn in school.
And his main point, the core argument, is that attitude is just, well, critical for success.
Which is what we're digging into. Our mission today, unpack this idea of attitude as a superpower. Why does Clemente think it's so important for work, for life in general?
Yeah, and how does it actually work? How is it different from, say, personality? How does it affect working with people?
And we'll touch on all those related bits too: confidence, positivity, growth mindset, EQ, being adaptable, resilience, managing expectations, even driving for excellence. It's all connected, apparently.
It seems like it. So where does he start?
He kicks off with this really fundamental question. Okay, you've done the training, you've got the technical skills. What's still missing sometimes?
Ah, yes. And his answer, loud and clear, is attitude.
Right. He basically says it's the key factor for success.
Yeah.
Maybe even more vital than, your coding skills or knowing all the right frameworks.
Which is a big claim. He contrasts school with the real world, doesn't he?
Yeah. In school, it's grades, formulas, right answers. But then you're out there working.
And suddenly it's more about how you fit into the team, how you collaborate. Are you engaged? Do you help solve problems?
Exactly. These invisible things, as he calls them. They all fall under this umbrella of attitude.
Invisible but powerful. He shares a story from his early days, right, as an auditor.
Yeah, junior auditor.
Yeah.
He says some colleagues were technically sharper, maybe better with the spreadsheets or regulations. But his focus, his intentional focus on his attitude being positive, helpful, collaborative, that's what he believes really accelerated his career.
So it opened doors for him, different roles, even different countries.
That's the story he tells. It really drives home that central message. Attitude matters a lot.
Okay, so if it's this crucial missing piece, what is it exactly? And how do you, get a good one?
Well, that's what the book tries to explain.
Yeah.
He starts by making a really important distinction. Attitude versus intelligence.
Right. Intelligence, he says, is kind of internal. It's what you've got, and it doesn't really change based on what someone else thinks of you.
But attitude, that's external. It's all about perception, how other people see you, how they experience interacting with you.
And that perception is key because, let's face it, most work involves other people. You can't usually succeed in a vacuum.
No way. So working well with others, according to Clemente, what does that actually look like?
It boils down to being, well, professional, positive, and helpful, simple words, but
Harder in practice sometimes.
maybe. It's about making people want to work with you, making them feel comfortable coming to you with issues or ideas.
And feeling they can give you honest feedback without you getting defensive.
Right.
Being approachable.
Exactly. Approachable is a good word for it.
Which brings up an interesting wrinkle. He discusses the danger of just trying too hard to be liked.
Ah, the yes man trap.
Yeah. It seems like the easy route, just agree with everyone, say yes to everything. But he argues it backfires.
How so? What's the downside?
Well, first, you end up overcommitted, probably spreading yourself too thin because you haven't prioritized.
Okay, makes sense.
But maybe more importantly, people start to see you as, well, not having your own ideas,
Yeah.
lacking conviction. You just agree with the last person who spoke.
Right. You become unreliable in a different way. People don't trust your judgment or your perspective because it seems like you don't really have one.
And that's especially bad if you're leading a team, isn't it? He mentions that Jeff Bezos quote.
Oh, yeah, the one about not needing two board members who always agree.
That's the one. If you're just echoing others, you're not adding unique value. You're redundant.
And practically speaking, like you said, if you say yes to everything just to be liked, you'll probably drop the ball somewhere. You can't do it all.
Which, ironically, means people won't like the results anyway, so it defeats the purpose.
So if being a people pleaser isn't the answer, what does he suggest instead?
He really emphasizes the power of engaging in problem solving. There's a big difference between just saying no and taking a different approach.
Okay, so instead of just shooting something down.
You ask questions. Try to understand what the other person is trying to achieve. Then you work together to find a way forward. Maybe their initial idea isn't feasible, but perhaps there's another solution.
So it's collaborative. You're engaging with the problem, not just dismissing it.
Exactly. And that makes you someone people want to come to, not just because you're nice, but because you're helpful, constructive, valuable.
You build a reputation as someone who helps move things forward.
Precisely. You add real value through your engagement.
Okay, so how do you figure out if you are being perceived that way? How do you know what your attitude actually looks like to others?
That's where feedback comes in. He talks about needing to actively understand how others see you. The 360-degree feedback exercise is one tool he mentions.
The 360. Can you remind us how that works?
Sure. Basically, it's gathering anonymous feedback from people all around you, your boss, your team members, your peers, usually through questionnaires, often handled by HR or an outside consultant.
So you get a multifaceted view.
Yeah. And he also mentions personality tests, not as definitive labels, but as maybe offering some objective clues about your tendencies.
Like how you react under pressure, whether you focus more on the task or the people, things like that.
Exactly. But the real insight, he suggests, comes from combining these. Look at the 360 feedback, look at the personality assessment. Are there common themes?
Seeing the patterns across different types of input.
Right. To get a clearer picture of your impact.
He tells a story about this, doesn't he? Something about feedback he got.
Oh yeah, the time of the month comment. It's pretty memorable. He got this feedback informally at a leaving party from his old accounting team.
Ouch. What was the context?
Apparently, during stressful month-end closings, he thought he was just being focused and driving things forward.
But they perceived it differently.
Yeah, they experienced him as being, well, difficult or overly stressed during that specific time each month. It was a real eye-opener for him about the gap between his intention and his impact.
Wow, that's a powerful example of how blind spots can work.
Definitely. It really highlights the need to be aware of how you're actually landing on people. He also talks about asking for face-to-face feedback, too.
Just directly asking someone.
Yeah, but carefully. Choose someone you trust, maybe a peer or a senior person. And crucially, you have to be genuinely ready to hear it. No defensiveness.
That's the hard part, isn't it? Hearing potentially critical feedback without trying to justify yourself.
Absolutely. The goal isn't to argue, it's just to understand their perception. Because as he keeps stressing, attitude is about how others perceive you.
You might think you're being helpful by pointing out flaws.
But if everyone else just thinks you're negative and always shutting down ideas, well, that's the reality you need to deal with.
Which leads nicely into that distinction he makes. Attitude versus personality.
Yes, this is really key. Personality, he says, is deeper. It's your core values, your beliefs, how you generally feel. It changes, but slowly.
It's more ingrained.
Right. Attitude, though.
Yeah.
That's more malleable, more controllable in the moment.
You can adjust it for different situations without changing your fundamental self, like an actor playing a role.
That's the analogy he uses, yeah. You're still you, but you can choose the attitude you project.
And that's actually quite liberating, isn't it? It means you're not stuck.
Exactly. Whatever your personality type, introvert, extrovert, optimist, pessimist, you can still consciously work on cultivating a more effective attitude.
So you can improve how you interact and how you're perceived, regardless of your baseline personality.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Which connects to another big piece, confidence.
Right. He talks about getting promoted to executive director and realizing his old style wouldn't work anymore.
Yeah. He couldn't be in the weeds on everything. He had to manage managers, think more strategically. His old hands-on approach wasn't sustainable.
So he had to adapt his attitude and his approach.
He did. And the key thing was, he had the confidence that he could adapt. He knew his old way wasn't working, and he believed he could learn a new way.
So he actively sought out new information, courses, reading.
Exactly. Neuroscience, leadership, building trust, things that would help him in that new, broader role.
And this highlights a cycle he talks about, right? Curiosity leads to learning.
And learning builds confidence. It becomes a positive feedback loop. A really crucial skill for navigating your career, he argues.
And he makes a point that applies to everyone, doesn't he, about adding value.
Yes. He really pushes back against that not my job thinking. Everyone's job, at its core, is to add value. Use your brain, look for opportunities to contribute.
Even if it's outside your official job description, like the operations person suggesting brand improvements.
Precisely that example. Good ideas can come from anywhere if people feel confident enough to voice them.
And he mentions his own sort of curiosity rabbit holes, like looking into CRISPR or nanotechnology, things totally unrelated to banking.
Yeah, he argues that cultivating that broad curiosity just generally feeds into a more confident, engaged mindset overall.
Because if you lack that basic confidence in your ability to figure things out,
Then problems seem way bigger, more daunting. You don't trust yourself to find a path forward. Confidence helps you maintain a positive attitude, see possibilities.
like he says, if you don't do something, nothing changes. Confidence gives you the push to do something.
Absolutely. And that connects directly to the power of positivity.
He starts that section with a thought experiment about missing a promotion.
Yeah, to illustrate loss aversion. How the fear of losing something can be a stronger driver than the hope of gaining something. It's a common psychological bias.
But then he links real positivity to self-trust, the turkey analogy.
Right. You can't feel positive about baking a turkey if you secretly think you're going to burn it. You need some underlying confidence in your ability.
But you don't need perfect confidence to start being more positive, do you?
No, that's his point. Confidence helps fuel positivity, for sure. But you can also just choose to be more positive, even if you're still working on the confidence piece. Make a conscious effort.
Fake it till you make it, kinda.
A little bit, maybe. But the act of choosing positivity opens doors, creates opportunities, makes success more likely. It's a choice with real consequences.
He does warn about going overboard, though, the drinking analogy.
Yeah, moderation is key. A little bit can be helpful. Too much becomes counterproductive. Find the right balance. Don't be unrealistically Pollyanna-ish.
And he talks about positivity being contagious in the workplace.
Definitely. A positive atmosphere makes people more willing to help each other out.
Like offering constructive feedback after a bad presentation, doing it in a helpful, positive way.
Exactly. It's about being helpful, which fosters reciprocity. You help someone, they're more likely to help you later. It creates a better environment for everyone.
Though, again, maintaining professional boundaries is important. Don't let positivity become unprofessional closeness.
Good point. But overall, he frames positivity almost like Asterix's magic potion.
Huh. Yeah, fueled by confidence, making you more helpful, productive, happier.
But you have to keep drinking it, metaphorically speaking. It takes ongoing effort.
Which ties into the next idea, the growth mindset. He tells a story about a factory worker learning to code.
Yeah, a great example of someone deciding they can learn new skills, adapt to a changing world. That's the essence of a growth mindset.
And he mentions research on job loss, how damaging it can be to well-being.
Right. But having a growth mindset, separating who you are from what you do for a living, can help you bounce back, adapt.
So growth mindset is basically believing you can learn, develop, improve. It's not fixed.
Exactly. And he acknowledges it takes work for some people. It might not come naturally. But he brings up neuroplasticity.
The brain's ability to change and rewire itself.
Yeah. It means learning and growth are physically possible for pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
You can change how you think and approach things.
And trying new things, practicing, repeating, that builds the confidence we were just talking about, right?
It all connects. And he says you can apply this growth mindset not just to technical skills, but to things like personal connections too.
Which leads us to...
Emotional intelligence, EQ.
Right. He starts with another personal story. From Angola again. Misjudging a colleague who needed a day off for, what was it, ID renewal.
Yeah. He initially thought it was excessive based on his own cultural context.
But then he asked questions, learned about the actual bureaucratic hurdles and time involved in Angola.
And realized his judgment was completely off. He needed more context, more empathy.
Exactly. A lesson in EQ, which he defines as understanding and managing emotions, yours and others. How does he differentiate EQ from attitude?
Attitude is how others perceive you. EQ is more about your internal ability to manage emotions and relationships, but they're linked in a cycle, right?
Mm.
Your EQ influences your actions, which shapes your perceived attitude.
So EQ involves being aware of others' feelings, not letting your own bad moods spill over onto them. Managing relationships effectively.
Yes. He mentions Daniel Goleman's work in the 4 components: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. It's broader than just empathy, though empathy is part of it.
It's about being more human, less robotic in interactions.
That's a good way to put it. And developing EQ. That's applying a growth mindset to your people skills.
He uses a model for learning here, right? The 4 stages.
Yeah, the 4 stages of competence. From unconsciously incompetent, you don't even know what you're doing wrong,
To consciously incompetent. Okay, now I see the
and
progress.
consciously competent, you're actively working on it, thinking about
And
it.
finally, unconsciously competent, it becomes natural,
Huh.
automatic.
Exactly. A useful framework for thinking about learning any skill, including EQ.
So how do you actually improve your EQ, according to Clemente?
Well, feedback again. 360s focused on EQ, asking trusted people for honest input. Self-reflection is huge too, understanding your own biases, your triggers.
And trying to see things from the other person's perspective. Empathy in action.
Definitely. Putting yourself in their shoes, what pressures are they under, what's their background? Asking questions helps here too. Build rapport, understand their triggers, biases, strengths.
Little moments of connection add up.
Yeah. And remembering people are different. Treat them based on their individual situation. He gives the example of how you'd treat a grieving friend differently.
Right. Context matters. He also shares his own struggle with impatience.
Yes, learning that not everyone grasps things at the same speed. A hard lesson for him apparently, but an important one for EQ.
It takes time, effort, and investment, really.
A worthwhile one, he argues. Which brings us to adaptability.
Another Angola story. Taking the job there, despite the risks.
Yeah, people warn him against it, but he saw an opportunity, embraced the challenge. Adapting to the culture, the more senior role, was crucial.
And later, moving to a bank with a totally different culture.
Right. It was uncomfortable at first, felt like a bad fit, but he adapted, figured out how to work within that new system, and eventually thrived.
So adaptability acted like a lever for his attitude, helping him stay positive and effective in new situations.
That's how he frames it. Adjusting your approach to communicate better, build relationships in unfamiliar territory.
And he suggests approaching change with curiosity. What can I gain? Instead, what will I lose?
Yeah, like Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai, learning from the new ways, benefiting from adaptation. He even suggests reframing change as improvements.
Just a little language trick to make it feel less threatening.
Could work.
Hmm.
And he reminds us, the world is changing constantly. Technology industry shifts. You have to adapt. Think Moore's Law, the Industrial Revolutions.
Change is the only constant, basically.
Pretty much. And remembering we are not what we do helps here. Your skills might need updating. You might change industries. Adaptability lets you do that.
Like the finance example, shifting from Excel focus to data analytics. The core job might be similar, but the required tools and attitudes change.
So if you expect change and trust your ability to adapt, you can approach it with curiosity, not fear. Be more peaceful about it.
He even suggests proactively creating change, taking on new projects, stretching yourself.
Practice makes perfect, or at least makes you more comfortable with adapting.
And if adapting sometimes involves setbacks, that leads to resilience, right?
Exactly. His analogy here is the basketball player, the three-point shooter.
They miss a lot, but they keep shooting.
That's resilience, keeping going after failure, refusing to quit. And he says it's something you can build. It makes you a workplace hero.
But it involves risk, doesn't it? Trying things means you might fail.
It does. So he suggests being smart about risk. Be honest about your readiness for a challenge. Ask for support. Don't set yourself up for an impossible task.
And crucially, reframe failure as learning.
Yes. Companies like Google, Amazon, Netflix, they supposedly encourage calculated risk-taking. They want people to learn from trying things.
Leaders want people who can learn, grow, take on the next challenge.
So pick challenges that stretch you, but aren't totally absurd. Get feedback from mentors.
He uses everyday examples too, right? Household problems.
Yeah, like dealing with a flood or a power cut. Each time you handle something unexpected, you build that resilience muscle. You gain confidence you can handle the next thing.
So viewing setbacks as learning reduces the recovery time, makes it less painful.
That's the idea. And he contrasts this with being a problem finder.
The person who only points out what's wrong.
Yeah. People avoid those individuals. They drag down morale, offer no solutions. Resilience is about finding solutions moving forward.
He uses the analogy of the airplane pilot in trouble.
Right. You have to act, make decisions, even with incomplete information. You can't just freeze or complain. You have to try to land the plane.
Okay, so adaptability and resilience help you navigate challenges. What about managing day-to-day interactions? Expectations.
Ah, yes. Mastering the art of managing expectations. His key tip here is classic.
Under-promise and over-deliver.
You got it. Especially with deadlines.
Why does that work so well?
it just creates a positive perception.
Yeah.
If you consistently deliver on time or even early, people see you as reliable, dependable. It builds trust.
He gives an example, right? Pushing a deadline back slightly.
Yeah, like if you think something will take 3 days, maybe ask for 4. It gives you breathing room. That if you finish in 3, you look great. If something unexpected happens, you've got a buffer.
But what if your boss sets the deadline? Or does it feel manipulative?
He suggests you might be surprised. Ask for more time. Explain why. Use your EQ to judge the situation. The worst they can say is no.
And definitely don't promise based on the absolute best case scenario, right?
Yeah, that's setting yourself up for failure.
Mm.
Always factor in potential hiccups.
What about the fear that people will then always expect you to over-deliver?
He uses the Michael Jordan analogy here. MJ missed plenty of shots. It's about consistently adding value overall, not being perfect every single time.
So focus on being consistently valuable, not necessarily a superstar on every single task.
Exactly. And honesty is key. Don't pretend you know something you don't, just to manage expectations.
Like saying, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Precisely. That builds way more credibility than bluffing and getting caught out later. Being upfront builds trust.
And this applies at all levels, he says. Managing expectations isn't just for juniors.
Absolutely. And remember his line, the no is always guaranteed. If you don't ask for more time or clarification, you definitely won't get it.
And it's not just about deadlines, right? It's also about over-delivering on quality,
Well,
striving for it.
Excellence, the final piece of the puzzle.
And this ties back to his own story again, getting that first banking job in Angola.
Yeah, it happened because as an auditor, he consistently went beyond just finding problems. He exceeded expectations.
So over-delivering isn't just about timing, it's about the substance of the work, the drive for excellence.
Exactly. It's about creating opportunities through the quality and thoughtfulness of your work.
Yeah.
Like the auditor example. Don't just identify the issue, suggest a workable solution.
Add your own perspective, your insights. Don't just regurgitate what the client already knows.
Right. If you're analyzing information, add your interpretation, your recommendations. Go the extra mile.
And doing that consistently builds trust, which gives you more freedom later.
Yes, people trust your judgment, so they give you more leeway to try new things, take initiative. Excellence becomes a habit, a process of always looking for ways to add more value.
What if you hesitate? Doubt your own ideas? Feel like you don't have anything valuable to add?
He brings it back to the no is always guaranteed. If you don't share the idea, it definitely won't happen. Start small, maybe share informally first.
And the bank's reason for hiring him, it wasn't just finding problems.
It was because he helped solve them. He added value beyond the basic audit function.
So he encourages listeners to push themselves now, contribute something unique.
Yeah, be as excellent as you can be right now. Put a piece of yourself into your work. That drive for excellence, he argues, is part of your attitude.
And it's the cure for boredom at work.
Yeah, that's his take. If you're striving for excellence, finding ways to add value, you're less likely to feel bored or disengaged. Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway from attitude is your superpower?
I think the core message is that attitude isn't fixed. It's a choice, a skill, a superpower you can develop. And it's incredibly important, maybe more important than ever, in this constantly changing world.
Especially with the fourth industrial revolution, all the tech changes. Adaptability and a positive, resilient attitude are crucial.
And remembering it's about your reactions and how others perceive them, it often matters more than just raw technical skill.
And crucially, it's separate from your personality. You can change your attitude with conscious effort.
So the encouragement is to actually try these things. Build confidence through curiosity, choose positivity, work on that growth mindset and EQ.
Be adaptable, build resilience, manage expectations well, and always aim for excellence.
Because ultimately, your job, everyone's job, is to add value. These are the tools to help you do that.
It feels like a really empowering message, ultimately. Trust yourself, try things, believe you can handle challenges. Improving your attitude makes everything better. Collaboration, career, life.
And remember, it's fluid. Setbacks happen, but they're temporary learning chances if you have the right attitude.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Yeah, based on everything we've talked about, what's maybe one small, tiny baby step you could take consciously, starting today, to shift your attitude in one of these areas?
Just one small thing. And what might the ripple effect of that tiny change be on your work, your interactions, your life? Something to think about.